Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, the place where we learn practical English. In today's episode of Word of the Day, we're going to learn not only one word, but almost 10 different words that mean absolutely the same thing. But first things first, let me ask you a question to begin with. How would you describe this house? Take some time to think. How would you describe it? What's the best way to describe it? Of course, there are so many different ways to describe this house. However, I'm almost sure that the vast majority of you guys have said old. Is it correct? If I'm not correct, let me know down in the comments, please. Don't get me wrong, old is a great universal adjective that can describe practically everything, from things to people, you name it. However, if you really want to improve your English, if you want to take it to the next level, consider learning these alternatives that I'm about to teach you.
Let's learn something!
And the first word that I wanted to teach you is shabby. This adjective describes something that is worn out, in bad condition, and, well, sometimes cheap. But most importantly, it's old, worn out, and in bad condition, shabby. So, for example, we can say that this house right here is shabby. Or we can say the same thing about this couch right here. This couch looks shabby. It's worn out, it's in bad condition, it's old, it's shabby, okay? As well as this person's clothes. His clothes are shabby as well. They look old, worn out, in bad condition. Shabby clothes. Shabby clothes.
Bit shabby, isn't it?
Tell me, do you typically keep the house this shabby?
Shabby little room. Far from the limelight.
Next on the list is run down. If something is run down, it's also in bad condition, it's not maintained properly, or just neglected. So, how would you guys describe these houses and this neighborhood? All these houses look shabby, of course, old, great, and we can also say that they are run down. So, if a building, a house is run down, it means they are in a bad condition, they are neglected, and not properly maintained. Run down houses. For example, this neighborhood has a lot of run down buildings. This neighborhood has a lot of run down buildings.
Run down and deserted.
Nothing. It's just kind of a rundown place.
Another great synonym, another great alternative for the word old is decrepit. Look at this barn right here. We could describe it as shabby, ramshackle, very old, or we could also say it's decrepit. A decrepit barn. This is a decrepit barn. Okay? Decrepit means weak, very old, falling apart, or almost broken. For example, this decrepit barn could collapse any day. This decrepit barn could collapse any day.
Why, you like things that are old and decrepit?
I recycle. I turn decrepit old buildings into shiny new ones.
Another great alternative is dilapidated. If something is dilapidated, it's falling apart, it's in very poor condition, it's in a bad condition. So, for example, this house is dilapidated. Of course, we can call it, as we've said, decrepit, shabby, old, very old, or dilapidated. For example, they bought this dilapidated house to fix it up and sell it. They bought this dilapidated house to fix it up and sell it.
Oh, I'm not in some old dilapidated mansion.
Go live in a dilapidated house in a toxic waste part of town.
And last but not least, we have this great word, ramshackle, which means absolutely the same thing. If you're speaking about a very old house, a very old, decrepit, dilapidated house, you can also call it a ramshackle house, right? For example, they live in a ramshackle cabin in the woods with no electricity. They live in a ramshackle cabin in the woods with no electricity.
It's humble beginnings in this ramshackle building, a dying daily.
As a ramshackle downtown dump.
All right, let's recap. If a house is very old, if a building is very old, first of all, you don't have to avoid the adjective old. Don't get me wrong, it's a great adjective. However, it's always great to know more alternatives. It's always great to know more synonyms. I mean, that's how you enrich your vocabulary, isn't it? So, you can also use the words like shabby, rundown, ramshackle, decrepit, or dilapidated. So all these synonyms and alternatives are great to describe something that is in bad condition, something that is not properly maintained, something that is very old and falling apart.
So far, so good.
Was that all?
Is that all?
If you're wondering how to describe an old car, here are some alternatives for you. Well, of course, you can say old. For example, he drives an old Toyota. It's from the 90s or 80s, but it still works. Okay, you can also say used. For example, he bought a used car for $5,000. He bought a used car, which means it's not brand new. So if a car is not brand new, of course, it's used. It's a used car. If the car has some visible damages like this one here, you can call it beat up. So, for example, my beat up pickup truck has lots of dents and peeling paint. This beat up truck has dents and peeling paint. Or you can even use the word a clunker. A clunker is a noun, and it's a slang term that refers to a very old and usually unreliable car that breaks down a lot, so nobody wants a clunker, right? For example, he can't afford a brand new car, so he bought another clunker. Or, yesterday my clunker broke down again on the highway.
Clunker, junker, beater, wreck, rattletrap.
And the bonus part. What if I want to describe a person who isn't very young anymore? What if I want to describe an old person? Am I supposed to call them old or something else, or decrepit or shabby?
What did you call me?
No, please, if you're speaking about a person, never use the words that we have just seen before that refer to old buildings, old houses, such as ramshackle, decrepit, dilapidated. Don't use these adjectives to describe old people, all right? I'm gonna give you some better, very polite alternatives that you can use in your everyday conversations.
Okay, gotcha.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead. And the first one, which is very polite and neutral, is elderly. Elderly. An elderly person. Elderly people. For example, this is my neighbor. She is an elderly woman. My elderly neighbor needs help with groceries. My elderly neighbor needs help with groceries.
where's your elderly friend?
So you remember elderly child.
My parents are elderly.
Another great alternative is senior. It's usually used with the word citizen, like a senior citizen, senior citizens. However, it can also be used on its own, senior or seniors. It's a very respectful and official term to describe elderly people. For example, this discount is for senior citizens over 65. Or, we should respect our seniors.
We're senior citizens.
This senior citizen over here is unfit for active duty.
Senior citizens, although slow and dangerous behind the wheel.
Senior citizens discount.
Senior citizen? Flanders?
Senior citizen, female, Caucasian.
If a person has stopped working, we can call them retired. For example, my dad is retired and travels a lot now. My dad is retired and travels a lot now.
You know, presidents retire, generals retire, horses retire.
Well, he's retired. Just retired.
I'm retired.
If you want to point out their age, you can say in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 80s, and so on. In their 90s, for example. How old do you think this woman is? I think she's in her 80s. What do you think? And our last word for today is going to be formal, however, very polite. Advanced in age. For example, the patient is advanced in age, but very healthy. The patient is advanced in age, but very healthy. Well, that's going to be it for today. I hope you've learned something new and useful today. If so, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Did you learn any new words today? Did you know the words like ramshackle, rundown, decrepit, dilapidated? Did you know them, or were they absolutely new for you? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in our next video. Bye, guys.